A delegation of Canadian MPs is set to travel to Taiwan this weekend, and the trip is happening at a pretty interesting time. A parliamentary committee just tabled a report on Canada-Taiwan relations in the House of Commons that calls for the feds to increase ties with Taiwan. That report, though, prompted fierce backlash from the Chinese embassy in Ottawa. The embassy is now accusing Canada of meddling in its domestic affairs because, of course, it considers Taiwan to be a part of China, and it's calling on Canadian politicians to stop, quote, engaging in political manipulation. So could the delegation's trip to Taiwan further aggravate tensions between Canada and China? With me now, Taiwan's ambassador to Canada, Harry Tseng. Hi, Ambassador. Good to see you again, and a pleasure to welcome you to our studio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for making the time. I wanted to start off and ask you about the report produced by a committee of MPs from all different parties, and in particular, one recommendation that they've made. I want to read it verbatim. They want the government to declare its clear and unwavering commitment that the future of Taiwan must only be the decision of the people of Taiwan. Do you think that will happen?
It should happen, and I think this is a very fundamental principle that democracy should adhere to. So we are very happy that this has been included in the first of the 18 recommendations.
I understand that you think it should happen. Do you think the federal government in this country, based on your interactions with them, is prepared to say something like that?
Politics are changing very rapidly. We are very happy to see that the atmosphere, at least in the parliament, has been moving in a direction that is as deliberated in this Taiwan report. Hopefully that the bureaucracy can catch up. This is not only happening in Canada, it is everywhere. In the United States, you see more of that happening. So it's just that this is written down in this report. It seems very much eye-catching. But should I say that, to me, this is not an overhaul of the Canadian policy toward Taiwan. Mm-hmm. This is actually a written recognition of a tacit policy for many years.
You mentioned that you've seen sort of an evolution, I think, of the way in which parliamentarians view the issue. And I did want to ask you about that and what your sense is, because I remember a few years ago covering the Halifax Security Forum, and Taiwan's president was going to get an award. There was speculation that the federal government was going to pull their funding of that award. They ultimately denied that. But it felt like the posture of the federal government toward China at the time was obviously, you know, it was influenced by a lot of things like the two Michaels being held. Have you noticed in those 2 years, in the interim, a difference?
Yes. I have seen a nuance of change in your policy toward China, toward Taiwan as well. And in the past 2 years, this is even more apparent. And so, again, this is not only happening in Canada. This is happening in many parts of the world, and because of the reasons a lot of people are aware of.
And let me ask you, sir, about the Canadian side, because you're about to travel to Taiwan with a number of members of parliament here, again, from all different parties. Is it your expectation that China's response will also be toned down?
It's of a different issue. This parliamentary delegation to visit Taiwan is a normal practice for years. It was interrupted because of the pandemic, but it was resumed late last year. And so you see your delegation visiting Taiwan October last year didn't come back with much condemnation or criticism from China anyway. So this trip to Taiwan should be also regarded the same way. We urge China to look at it that way.
Can I ask you, based on that experience, I'm sure you're very familiar with the headlines in this country over the last 6 weeks around allegations of Chinese interference in our federal elections. You once referred to Chinese interference in Taiwan as, quote, a disinformation campaign and cognitive warfare. What's been going through your mind as you read the headlines about the allegations about China's behavior here in Canada?
The level is different. What is happening in Canada, of course, is happening in Taiwan on a daily basis. But here, when it was reported in the local medias, it seems to be always referring to the elections in 2019 or 2021. But in Taiwan, this is happening on a daily basis. And they have a very clear objective. that is to change the Taiwan's political atmosphere in a way that they can cultivate or support clandestinely those politicians they see in their favor. Similar to your report here, but I think this is a process of political socialization in any country. People need to be exposed to that kind of intervention so they know how to make their best choice when election comes.
On that, I guess, on that note, just to conclude, do you understand or sympathize with the calls to have an inquiry here, to fully understand the scope of what China is alleged to have done?
That is actually your domestic politics. I don't want to comment on that. But in Taiwan, I think some of the MPs has commented to reporters here. This trip to Taiwan is for them to learn from Taiwan's experience, how we handle disinformation campaign from China, and how we handle cyber attacks. So all those are part of the so-called gray zone tactics to Taiwan, with the ultimate objective of that is actually to take Taiwan back without firing a bullet. And so, this is much serious in terms of the nature of the issues here in Canada and there in Taiwan.
Okay, on that note, I'll leave it. Ambassador, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.